Okay, today I decided that the place to start on this watch design and casting for a 14 karat gold watch is we're going to start with the dial. Now I've got the movement in, and I think I had a picture of that on the first series of the watch design. So I need to find the dial feet locations for the 2824, and I also had to decide how big the dial was going to be, because that dictates all the rest of the measurements for the watch case. So you'll see that I had a CAD cam picture, or a CAD picture, I apologize, and the CAD picture is just a little idea of how it's going to look for setting inside the bezel. So there'll be an inverted bezel, and then there'll be the dial setting inside the bezel. And then, of course, the watch case will be made, and so forth. But tonight, I just thought I'll show you what my deal was. I made this. You can see the side view of this. I made this jig so that I could glue the brass dial onto the jig, and then I could actually cut the jig round instead of trying to use a milling machine to do it. It's worked pretty good. I used a carbide cutter first and cut it around, and then I'm using the cutoff tool to square up the outside edge just a little bit. Plus, it'll allow me, if the lacquer doesn't break loose on the jig, the dial is just on lacquer, or shellac. I'm for a better term. I heated the thing up, put some shellac on it, and then stuck the dial down. So my original intention will be, after this prototype, is I will make a 14 karat or a 10 karat gold dial. But right now we're just trying to get an idea of what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do for getting the dial set up. So I hope you enjoyed this little part. This would be part 2, making the watch dial. And I'll leave it as part 2 until we got the watch dial itself made in prototype. That means brass. So I'll show you how I'm going to find the the dial feet here, and so forth. And the lathe makes an awful lot of noise, so I'll try and just hold the machine here and give you an idea. That should do it. Now we'll make the actual measurements as to how I think I'm going to make the dial 30 millimeters or 29. I haven't quite decided, but I'll go ahead and trim it down to one of those dimensions, and we'll go from there. Okay, in this stage, we're actually cutting the watch dial to 30 millimeters. And I have to be careful doing this, because if I heat that brass dial up too much, it'll pop off of there. And there's another way I could have done it. I could have sandwiched it, but that would have required 2 more pieces of jig, and I want to make sure the prototype is going to work, and then we can come up with a better way of making the dial itself. I think we're going to do a laser etch with laser tape, and then we'll use a pad printer to print the dial itself. And I believe I'm going to, like I said, use a gold dial. And that dial with a 10 karat 26 gauge is $100. 14 karat is about $170. So you can see this watch is not going to be a cheap grade watch. It's going to be kind of a one of a kind probably, and we'll see what happens as we go along. So I know the lathe is pretty noisy, but you can see that I'm just easing in there. You can see the chips, I think, flying off of there. I may have to build a washer and thread that so I can screw it down tight. But for right now, everything's working just fine. So we'll continue making the dial and see if we can get part of this done. Okay, we pretty well got the brass circle for the dial cleaned up and trued up, and they are exactly 30 millimeters for distance. And I'll decide whether I need to come down to 29 before I take it off the fixture that I made for it. And then here is the watch movement. Oops, get it over here. I'm sorry. Here is the watch movement, and like that. So we have just about the right amount of room. So we have just about the right amount of room for it. And the next thing to do now would be to determine exactly the millimeter size of the dial. I'm not sure what I want to do there. I don't know whether to go 29 or 30. It's going to make the overall watch 40 millimeters. Rolex likes 40. I think 40 is their favorite. Their sports watch is a 40. They did make a 41 for a while, and nobody would buy it for some reason. So they discontinued making a 41 millimeter watch, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted the 41 millimeters. So, and now if you watch the newer watches coming out, Invicta and a couple, three others that I can't think of right now. But man, these are huge watches, and gals are wearing them. It's just unreal. So we'll contemplate tonight on the rest of that dial and decide what we're going to do, whether it's 29 or 30. I'd like to keep the watch at about 40 millimeters, similar to that of a Rolex, and we'll see what comes up, because I know it's going to be over $1,000 just to cast it in gold. My intention is to do this in wax on the CNC milling machine, and then cast the wax and then finish it up on the mill and on the lathe. So I'm very experienced with lost wax casting. I've done it for years. I have 6,000 to 7,000 mountings that we built over the years and bought. So I do know the shrink values, and sometimes you get some warpage. But I think if it casts right and we do the right temperatures, we're going to get a nice casting, and we'll be able to finish it up. So I think that's all we're going to do for tonight. And happy dreams, everybody.